Hey guys, tonight we're popping open a bottle of history's most questionable elixirs and swigging straight from the bottle of danger. The world of deadly drug tonics every 1920s family kept at home. That's right, tonight. It's less Gatsby's glittering parties and more grandma's cough syrup. Is 80% morphine, 20% hope. So before you drift off, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this sort of thing. Leave a comment below with the weirdest cure you've ever tried. Or just tell me what time it is where you are. Someone out there is listening to this while elbow deep in expired cough drops. Now, dim the lights, put on a fan for that soothing white noise, and get comfortable. Maybe tuck yourself in tight so the ghosts of chemists past can't sprinkle any soothing tonics on your nightstand. Let's set the scene. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to buy heroin at the drugstore? Legally? Could you imagine giving your child a teaspoon of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup and then realizing it's basically just liquid opium? Have you ever woken up with a hangover and thought, what I need right now is some radium water with a splash of strychnine? Did people in the 1920s ever sleep? Or were they just quietly hallucinating in a well-ventilated parlor? Did every house really have a shelf full of bottles marked cure-all that could probably fuel a rocket or flatten a horse? What did these potions taste like, besides regret? Did anyone actually read the fine print? Or did they just take a swig and hope for the best? Would you last a week in a world where doctor recommended could mean arsenic, plus a dash of raspberry flavor? And what happened when the family dog got into the cough drops? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1923. There's a bottle of cocaine toothache drops on the dining table. Someone's grandmother is quietly glowing in the corner, and the neighbor insists his tuberculosis is almost gone thanks to something called Lydia Pinkham's vegetable compound. The air smells like menthol, whiskey, and just a hint of existential dread. Good luck. You open the bathroom cabinet, and it's less Band-Aids and aspirin and more mad scientist starter kit. Bottles with labels like Dr. Sneed's Invincible Elixir and White Star morphine tablets jostle for space. There's something for every ache and ailment, as long as you don't mind a mild brush with death before breakfast. Let's talk about the experience of starting your morning in 1923, America. By standing in front of this glittering, glassy, slightly humming wall of tonics and pills, you're not greeted by the comforting sight of today's Tylenol bottle or some benign saline nasal spray. No. What stares back at you is a rainbow of amber glass, cork stoppers, and labels written in fonts so elaborate you feel like you're already hallucinating. Each label claims something miraculous, restores vitality, brings quick relief for ladies fainting and men's regret. Some bottles don't even bother to tell you what's inside. They just invite you to take a swig and see what happens. This is healthcare as a trust exercise, and the only thing you can really trust is that whatever you drink, you'll feel something. Let's take inventory. On the top shelf, next to the dented can of borax and a mysterious jar simply labeled mercurial ointment, you find Dr. Caldwell's syrup pepsin. Sounds gentle. It's not. The main ingredients are sugar, alcohol, and the promise of digestive miracles, plus a mild hint of industrial cleaner. Next to it, a bottle of Winslow's soothing syrup winks at you. The marketing says it's for teething children. The active ingredient is, quite literally, opium. Congratulations, you're one nap away from becoming a legend in the local parenting group. Nearby, Carter's little liver pills claim to fix everything from headaches to dullness of the eyes, as if your liver is also in charge of your personality. Smells drift out, some sweet, some bitter, some just chemical. You catch a hint of peppermint, licorice, and whatever that sharp, metallic scent is that suggests you shouldn't be inhaling too deeply. Bottles are sticky, The labels are peeling, and the entire cabinet leans ever so slightly, like it's seen things. Which it has. But the real centerpiece? White Star morphine tablets, now with extra morphine. They're the 1920s version of pain management. And they come in a charming little tin you could slip into your vest pocket for emergencies, or for when family dinner gets tense. Pain relief was just a swallow away, and so, potentially, was total oblivion. Got a toothache? Try heroin drops. Head cold? There's an invigorator for that, featuring a brisk splash of alcohol and cocaine. This is not a cabinet for the faint of heart, or the faint of liver. Maybe you're feeling adventurous and reach for Radithor, a radioactive water promising to restore youth and stamina. You don't need a Geiger counter to know that 2 doses daily is less medical advice and more a dare. This is an age before warning labels. Before the FDA really had teeth, the only side effects anyone mentions are in tiny apologetic print. May cause mild digestive excitement or sudden death. And this is a family affair. Kids, adults, the elderly, everyone has their own preferred poison. Grandma sips her bitters for women's complaints. Dad sprinkles a little quinine in his morning coffee. And the kids clamor for cough syrup that would make modern pharmacists faint. You get the sense that the medicine cabinet is more like a communal cauldron, a bubbling, hissing source of comfort and risk that ties the family together through trial, error, and occasionally, total memory loss. Let's be honest. The real reason these cabinets were so packed? The pharmacy was basically the Wild West. Regulations were polite suggestions. If you could bottle it, you could sell it. Anyone with a white coat, a business card, or just a good moustache could become a local medical legend. You trusted your doctor because he looked you in the eye and handed you a bottle labeled Invincible Elixir, not because it was safe, but because it was available. And as you close the door to this chemical wonderland, you can't help but feel a little awe, a little fear, and maybe just a little bit grateful that your next cold will probably be fought with something less explosive than strychnine and a positive attitude. The 1920s medicine cabinet. Equal parts hope, hazard, and history. Forget Wheaties. In the 1920s, your morning might begin with a brisk spoonful of nerve tonic, a solution that includes enough strychnine to make your eyelids twitch and your hair contemplate unionizing. Breakfast is served, and so is danger. Let's set the table. It's 1923. You shuffle to the kitchen in your best flannel robe, sunlight slanting through lace curtains, and reach for something to put pep in your step. There's no coffee machine gurgling gently in the corner. Instead, the kitchen shelf is lined with brown glass bottles, promising you stamina, energy, and strength in a font so ornate it looks like a ransom note from a particularly excitable poet. These aren't just vitamins. They're the breakfast of anyone who wants to greet the day with both enthusiasm and a vague sense of existential peril. First course? A little nerve tonic, which is, in case you're wondering, the pharmaceutical equivalent of trying to start your car with a lightning rod. Nerve tonics were everywhere. Doctors prescribed them for tired nerves, exhaustion, melancholia, or the general feeling that the world is just a bit too much. Sometimes they came in pleasant berry flavor. Sometimes they just tasted like defeat. The real flavor, though, was strychnine, yes. The same strychnine that modern science reserves for pest control and true crime podcasts. You pour yourself a dose, following directions that are both vague and ambitious. 1 teaspoon, 3 times daily, or whenever you need to face your relatives. Down it goes. The burn is immediate and memorable. It's the taste of bitterness, licorice, and a dash of regret. The aftertaste is medical, with a faint metallic edge that lingers in your teeth and your soul. You're not sure if you're more awake, but you do notice your fingers are tapping out Morse code on the countertop, and your left eye is practicing the Charleston. Next up, tonic number 2. Maybe it's Dr. Pepper's Invigorator, no relation to the soft drink, unless you count the fact that both will eventually make your heart race. This bottle contains not just strychnine but also caffeine, a sprinkle of quinine, and a little cocaine for that mid-morning slump. You read the label. It claims to restore lost manhood, bolster the nerves, and bring back the joy of living. In reality, it brings back the joy of clinging to the table until the trembling stops. Don't worry. These tonics aren't just for adults. No, the whole family can join in. Junior gets a diluted version, a gentle stimulant for children feeling peevish before school. Grandma gets her own women's elixir, because nothing says graceful aging like a daily microdose of poison. And Dad? He chases his tonic with a shot of bootleg whiskey and the quiet prayer that he'll make it to lunch without his heartbeat spelling out Morse code for help. Food is almost an afterthought. Sure, you can have oatmeal or some eggs, but why bother? Your nerves are already wide awake and sending out Christmas cards. Toast is optional. Butter is a luxury. The only essential is your morning dose of strychnine, which you're told tones the system and stimulates digestion. You're not convinced about the digestion part, but you do notice that breakfast is a lot more exciting when you're not sure if it will be your last. Let's be honest. The 1920s breakfast table was a chemical battleground. There was competition too. Every druggist, every pharmacy counter, every newspaper ad promised a better, faster, more electrifying way to wake up. If one tonic didn't make you feel invincible, or at least invulnerable, another was waiting in the wings, promising no more fatigue, boundless vigor, and a disposition so cheerful even your neighbor's rooster will stop complaining. So why did people do it? Because life was hard, the mornings were cold, and the world was changing fast. The promise of instant energy, of being restored and fortified, was just too tempting. Plus, no one really knew what strychnine did to you if you took it in medicinal doses. The line between poison and panacea was thin, and breakfast was the daily coin toss. By the time you finish your morning routine, you're ready for anything, or at least you're vibrating at a frequency that allows you to see through time. And that, my friend, is how you started the day in the roaring 20s, wired, wild, and only slightly radioactive. Breakfast of champions indeed. Got a teething baby? Hand them some misses. Winslow's soothing syrup, guaranteed to put a child to sleep for hours, possibly days, courtesy of its main ingredient, opium. In the 1920s, parenting meant reading the label after you'd already administered the dose. Let's set the nursery scene. The wallpaper is pastel, the crib is sturdy, and the medicine shelf looks like it belongs in a bootleg apothecary. There's a baby wailing in the background, gnawing furiously on a wooden rattle. Modern parents reach for a frozen teether or maybe a drop of organic chamomile, but here in the roaring 20s, you grab a bottle from the medicine cabinet, one with a cheerful label covered in flowers and a picture of a serene baby who is, presumably, unconscious. You shake the bottle, pour a teaspoon, and the syrup slides out, thick and sweet-smelling, with a scent somewhere between licorice and pharmacy. You check the back of the label, eventually. That's where you find the ingredients: sugar, alcohol, and a heroic dose of morphine or opium. If that doesn't work, there's paregoric on the shelf, a lovely concoction of camphorated tincture of opium. It's marketed as a gripe water for colicky infants. If the baby's not sleeping, you soon will be, mainly because you'll lose consciousness after sniffing the bottle. And it's not just for teething. The world of 1920s pediatric medicine is a kaleidoscope of questionable options. Cough? There's syrup for that, featuring codeine and chloroform, flavored with wild cherry. Sore throat? A lozenge of heroin will smooth things out. Trouble with nerves, also known as being a child? The pharmacy has a solution, literally, containing just enough barbiturate to make nap time feel like a vacation in a blackout. Children's tonics aren't shy about their contents. Dr. Moffat's teething powders claim to settle the gums and calm the baby. But what they really do is slide a little mercury into the digestive tract. Infant soothing cordial, sold by the pint, works by flooding the baby's system with alcohol and poppy extract. For the restless and irritable, just a drop of laudanum will do. Directions: repeat as needed. There is no mention of when, if ever, to stop. Imagine the bedtime routine. You gently rub a spoonful of syrup on your child's gums, tuck them in, and marvel as they slip instantly into a peaceful slumber. For a moment, you're grateful. No more screaming, no more late-night pacing, but soon you notice the side effects. Shallow breathing, glassy eyes, and a suspiciously motionless baby monitor, which back then is just your own nerves and a cup pressed to the wall. Modern parenting books don't cover this chapter, and neither did the 1920s. Unless you count the occasional newspaper headline about tragic accidents or the growing movement of mothers quietly wondering why their children are so restful. Even the advertisements are wild. Smiling nurses, happy babies, and testimonials from parents who swear that Mrs. Winslow's is the only thing that works. No one mentions the mild addiction potential or the way the family doctor hands out samples like Halloween candy. In an era where medical regulation is more of a suggestion, the phrase child safe means small enough dose not to kill outright. Of course, it wasn't just babies. Older kids got their share of the medicine chest too. Children's cough relief is a delightful blend of codeine and sugar. The schoolboy nerve tonic is pure caffeine with a dash of strychnine, great for spelling bees and spontaneous jazz hands. And if your little one happens to swallow something they shouldn't, syrup of ipecac will handle that, encouraging a dramatic, rapid exit, hopefully on the kitchen floor and not your favorite rug. Looking back, it's a miracle anyone survived childhood, but the parents of the time did what everyone does. They trusted the experts, the labels, and the soothing words of salesmen who promised peace, quiet, and at least one nap a day. The result? A generation of children who were tough, resilient, and, by necessity, immune to just about everything except their own medicine cabinets. So next time you complain about the taste of modern cough syrup, remember Junior's little helpers, the unsung heroes and hazards of 1920s childhood, because sometimes the cure was more dangerous than the curse, and bedtime was a leap of faith. Head pounding? Try Bayer's heroin tablets. Yes, actual heroin, recommended for coughs, colds, and the general existential horror of living in an age before Wi-Fi. Side effects include drowsiness, euphoria, and accidentally inventing jazz. Let's set the scene. You're hunched over your kitchen table in 1921, clutching your forehead as the world's noisiest Model T sputters past your window. Maybe it's the neighbor's phonograph blaring the latest ragtime. Or maybe you're just living through the stress of being alive before the invention of noise-cancelling headphones. The solution is waiting in your medicine cabinet, tucked neatly next to the cough drops, Bayer heroin tablets, for headache, neuralgia, and all nervous troubles. No prescription needed. No awkward pharmacist consultation. Just pop the cap, tip out a couple of tablets, and marvel at the fact that you're about to medicate with something that would make modern pharmacists drop their mortar and pestle in horror. The tablets themselves are small, white, and utterly innocent looking. The box is decorated with reassuring Germanic precision, as if to say, "Of course you can trust us. We invented aspirin." In fact, Bayer was the same company that brought aspirin to the broad masses, then immediately doubled down by launching heroin as the next miracle cure. Why? Because it worked. Headaches, toothaches, the vapors, existential dread, heroin swept it all away in a gentle, slightly foggy tide. Even children were given heroin syrup for their coughs, their fevers, and their chronic inability to sit still in church. The logic was simple. If the kid isn't coughing, is that not a win? The experience of pain relief in the Golden Age was less about dulling pain and more about erasing the memory of ever having had a body in the first place. The first 20 minutes after taking a tablet, you feel like you could run a marathon or finally finish all the ironing. The next 20, you feel like the ironing can wait. For a few blissful hours, the bills, the boss, the neighbor's banjo, none of it matters. You are untethered, drifting on a cloud made of German pharmaceuticals and the sincere hope that nobody asks you to do math. Let's be clear, the side effects were listed, just not very honestly. May cause mild drowsiness, the label claims, and that's if you're lucky. For many, it was a swift ride to dreamland, complete with the urge to start scatting jazz melodies or to invent new forms of interpretive dance in the living room. Your headache is gone. So is your ambition, your sense of time, and, for some, your shoes. If you find yourself staring at a wall and feeling deeply inspired by the wallpaper pattern, congratulations, you've hit the sweet spot. Pain relief in the 1920s wasn't just about headaches. Heroin was advertised for everything from hay fever to womanly discomforts. It was in cough syrups, lozenges, and even mixed with wine for a restful evening. At the local soda fountain, you could order a heroin phosphate for your nerves, right next to the Coca-Cola, which still included coca leaf extract. It's not that people weren't aware of the potential for trouble. It's just that, much like today, if something made you feel that much better, the fine print became easy to ignore. Doctors handed out samples. Ads in magazines assured mothers that their children's sniffles would vanish with a teaspoon of heroin elixir. The world was noisy, dirty, unpredictable, and sometimes painful. And here was an answer that fit neatly in a pillbox and promised peace. Nobody asked about dependency because the word hadn't entered the mainstream yet. The problem wasn't the medicine, it was the people who didn't know when to stop. At least, that's what the newspapers said. And yet, it was a different kind of era. You were expected to power through the day, work hard, smile politely, and not complain about your aches, your heartaches, or your haunted attic. Heroin was the shortcut to a good attitude. It turned parents into saints, jazz musicians into legends, and a generation into unintentional pioneers of both pharmacology and, sometimes, accidental poetry. Eventually, authorities noticed that maybe, just maybe, there were some issues. Headlines began to pop up about habit-forming remedies and unexpected complications. But by then, the genie was out of the bottle, humming a show tune and promising relief from whatever ailed you. So the next time you pop a painkiller for a headache, imagine a world where your options included the most notorious drug in modern history, brought to you by the same people who made your baby aspirin. Because in the golden age of pain relief, there was no such thing as over-the-counter caution. There was only blissfully unregulated relief. Dentist appointments are overrated when you can numb your mouth and your moral compass with a few drops of pure, legal cocaine. Rub it on your gums and, for a brief shining moment, believe that you are the king of oral hygiene and questionable life choices. Let's set the scene. It's the roaring 1920s. You've just bitten into a piece of last week's sourdough and felt that unmistakable jolt of pain radiate through your jaw, a toothache, the original enemy of joy. In a world where the average dentist's toolkit looks like something you'd use to fix a fence, and anesthesia means bite down on this stick and think happy thoughts, you reach for a miracle in a bottle: cocaine toothache drops. No prescription needed, no judgment passed. Just a friendly label decorated with an illustration of a blissful, pain-free child and the words, "for immediate relief." The instructions are simple. Open the bottle, dip in a glass rod or your cleanest finger, and rub generously onto the offending gum. The effect is instantaneous. A cool, tingly numbness spreads across your mouth. Within seconds, the pain vanishes. Your toothache is gone, replaced by a gentle euphoria and the sudden, burning desire to alphabetize your kitchen shelves. Your entire face feels lighter, as if gravity itself has stopped trying so hard. The sensation isn't subtle. As the drops soak in, you feel your lips fizz, your cheeks buzz, and your mind briefly open to the possibility of buying a typewriter and finally writing that great American novel. For a few minutes, you are pain-free, carefree, and, if you accidentally lick your finger, wide awake in a way that makes coffee look like a weak suggestion. Cocaine was more than a numbing agent. It was the original multitasker. A dental anesthetic, a mood booster, and, if you believe the advertisements, a cure for all that ails you, from the blues to a lack of ambition. You're not alone. Parents kept a bottle in the kitchen cupboard for emergencies. Next to the flour and the family cookbook, kids got a drop rubbed on a sore gum, then skipped off to school with their shoes untied and their pupils enormous. Even the family dog occasionally benefited. If he managed to get into the trash, there was no stigma, only relief. Cocaine wasn't a street drug. It was a trusted household name, right up there with Lysol and Listerine, which, by the way, was also marketed as a cure for gonorrhea. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the sound of druggists ringing up another sale. Cocaine toothache drops. 1 bottle. That'll be 15 cents. And may I recommend our ether-infused cough lozenges while you're here? Newspapers and magazines were full of cheery testimonials from satisfied mothers, grinning children, and a few suspiciously energetic grandparents. I used cocaine drops, and now little Timmy never complains. 1 letter raved. The fine print didn't mention the occasional child trying to build a zip line in the attic at 3 a.m. Of course, there's a reason modern dentists don't hand out vials of cocaine at your 6-month cleaning. Even in the 1920s, some people noticed the downside. Maybe it was the mild insomnia or the sense that your jaw was vibrating. Maybe it was the way you started greeting the neighbors with intense, unsolicited advice on how to reorganize their garden. But at the time, these were just the quirks of someone committed to dental hygiene. You weren't an addict, you were ahead of the curve. And if you needed more convincing, consider the alternatives. Clove oil tastes like despair. Whiskey makes your breath a fire hazard, or just living with the pain. Until a traveling dentist came to town with his pliers and a lack of sympathy. No, thank you. A quick dab of cocaine was progress. Pure and simple. Eventually, the party had to end. Authorities started noticing that maybe, just maybe, there were some issues with giving everyone a tiny bottle of motivation and invincibility. Regulations followed, the bottles vanished, and the era of cocaine for toothaches became a footnote in medical history. A cautionary tale with very clean teeth. So next time you wince at the dentist's bill, Imagine a world where you could fix the pain, boost your mood, and reorganize your sock drawer all before breakfast, with a couple drops of legal, high-octane dentistry. Because once, upon a time, the road to oral health was paved with pure pharmaceutical-grade enthusiasm. Feeling run down? A swig of Fowler's solution delivers a hit of arsenic that promises to make your cheeks rosy and your future much shorter. Add a splash of sarsaparilla for taste, and you've got the 1920s answer to an energy drink. Let's wander over to the kitchen sideboard, where all the most questionable health decisions are made before 9 a.m. There, glinting in the morning sun, is an array of glass bottles, each one a mysterious elixir, promising vigor, beauty, and a metabolism that doesn't take weekends off. On the label of Fowler's solution, you'll see bold promises. Restores appetite, invigorates the blood, guaranteed to improve complexion. The ingredients list, if it's honest at all, reads like the back of a hardware store. Arsenic, iron, alcohol, maybe a dash of quinine for that sophisticated bitter finish. This is not a joke. Arsenic was once considered the darling of the medicine chest. The thinking went, if a little bit of something deadly made you feel slightly better, why not make it a daily ritual? The dose was small, of course, just enough to keep you on your toes, give your cheeks a healthy flush, and, if you overdid it, maybe send you into a gentle, eternal nap. In the 1920s, feeling tired wasn't a sign to get more rest. It was a sign you needed more poison. You wake up groggy, pour yourself a jigger of Fowler's, and toast to your own resilience. But arsenic was just the opening act. The supporting cast included iron tonics, which were less medicine and more liquid horseshoe. Iron tonics claimed to fortify the blood, end nervous exhaustion, and restore manly vigor. You chug it down, only to discover it tastes like rusty nails dissolved in syrup. Still, it was easier than eating your vegetables, and you could chase it with a bottle of sarsaparilla, basically root beer with enough alcohol and botanical extracts to technically qualify as salad. The sarsaparilla itself deserves a shout-out. Advertised as a spring tonic, it was packed with mysterious roots, a few actual herbs, and enough sugar to rot your teeth before you even finished the bottle. Kids begged for it at the soda fountain. Adults drank it for their nerves. No one really knew what it did, but it sure tasted good, and for a few sparkling minutes, you felt like you could run a marathon or at least outpace the local taxman. And of course, let's not forget the old lace part of the equation. Household tonics were an art form, lovingly prepared at home with the kind of creativity that comes from equal parts boredom and mild desperation. Grandma's spring pick-me-up might include dandelion wine, a spoonful of molasses, and whatever tincture happened to be sitting at the back of the pantry. Recipes were handed down with the solemnity of a family heirloom. 2 teaspoons before breakfast, 1 at lunch, and don't tell the neighbors. What's in it? By midday, you've cycled through enough tonics to technically qualify as a hazardous materials site. Your cheeks are pink, your pulse is racing, and your outlook on life is as bright as your odds of seeing 1930. You wonder how anyone survived. But the truth is, most people didn't think twice about it. If the neighbors saw you wobbling down the street with a wild look in your eye and a song in your heart, they just figured your blood was up and you were having a good spring. The marketing was relentless. Newspaper ads featured radiant women, robust men, and testimonials from satisfied customers who claimed to have cured everything from sadness to scurvy with a daily hit of arsenic and sassafras. Doctors played along after all. The alternative was telling people to get more sleep and eat actual food. And who had time for that? If you're wondering why nobody stopped to question the wisdom of daily arsenic, you're not alone. Sometimes people did get suspicious, like when their hair started falling out or their hands went numb. But mostly, they trusted in the science of the day, which, in hindsight, was about as trustworthy as a raccoon with a bank account. So, next time you hear someone raving about a natural energy shot or a superfood smoothie, just remember, we've been here before. In the 1920s, health came in a bottle, and the only thing more dangerous than feeling tired was trusting the cure. Bottoms up. And don't forget to smile. Those rosy cheeks aren't going to poison themselves. There's a bottle on every nightstand promising relief. Ingredients: half the liquor cabinet, a shot of codeine, and a whisper of chloroform for that extra "don't wake up till spring" effect. Cough twice and call your lawyer. Let's step carefully into the 1920s bedroom. Dim lamp, creaking floorboards, and a glass bottle of cough syrup that looks more like something stolen from a speakeasy than anything your doctor should recommend. You're sick, your throat burns. You sound like a Model T trying to start in the dead of winter. You need relief, or at least a temporary vacation from consciousness. Luckily, the pharmacy has your back with a syrup that promises to quiet the lungs and calm the nerves. Translation: it's time to take the kind of medicine that would put a grizzly bear into light hibernation. You pick up the bottle. It sloshes heavily, like it's considering whether you deserve mercy. The label is a work of art. Flowery script, elegant flourishes, and plenty of medical jargon designed to distract from the fact that this stuff is basically booze with a pharmaceutical subplot. Ingredients: alcohol, usually 20% or more. Codeine, a soothing little opiate touch to take the edge off your mortality. And then, of course, a drop or two of chloroform, the 1920s equivalent of flipping your life's off switch for a while. You unscrew the cap and the scent hits you. A blend of licorice, bitterness, and danger. You take a teaspoon because instructions say 1 dose. You won't know until later that dose is loosely interpreted, depending on how much you trust your liver. The moment the syrup hits your tongue, your throat goes warm, and your entire body feels like it's slowly melting into the bed sheets. Your cough doesn't stand a chance, not because the medicine fixes it, but because you immediately forget what coughing is. Within minutes, you're drifting, your limbs are loose, your thoughts wander through the room like they're looking for snacks. You can't tell if it's midnight or next Thursday. The cough syrup doesn't just suppress your cough, it suppresses your ability to do long division, walk in a straight line, or remember why you walked into the kitchen earlier. For children, the doses were smaller, but not by much. Parents in the 1920s thought nothing of handing little Junior a spoonful of codeine-laced syrup to help him sleep off that cold. Kids went from coughing fits to celestial slumber in under 5 minutes. Bedtime stories were optional. The medicine did all the heavy lifting. It was effective, sure, effective at turning the entire household into a quiet, gently snoring tableau. The wildest part? Many of these syrups were specifically marketed as non-habit forming, a phrase that in the 1920s meant we don't want you asking questions. Advertisements featured smiling mothers, angelic children, and stern-looking doctors who presumably took their own product before approving these ads. Safe for the whole family, the posters promised, failing to mention that safe was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. And if you didn't like one brand, there were dozens more. Some had capsicum pepper for warming effects. Others threw in cannabis extract for deep relaxation. A couple even included ammonia, because apparently someone in product development got confused about the difference between treating a cough and stripping floor wax. But the centerpiece of the whole experience was the chloroform. It wasn't enough for these syrups to dull the senses. They wanted to make sure your brain took a brief sabbatical. A teaspoon too many. And you weren't just sleeping. You were communing with your ancestors. Waking up from a chloroform-enhanced cough syrup nap was like respawning in a video game, disoriented, refreshed, and unsure why you're not wearing socks anymore. And yet, people trusted these syrups wholeheartedly. Why? Because colds were miserable, doctors were expensive, and when relief came in a bottle you could buy without signing anything, people didn't question it too closely. Plus, the results were immediate. You stopped coughing, you got some sleep, and you temporarily forgot every stressor in your life. So the next time you reach for a bland, modern cough suppressant that tastes like mint and disappointment, spare a thought for the 1920s version. Strong enough to fell a moose, sweet enough to mask the poison, and comforting enough to make the whole house quiet by 9 p.m. Cough syrup roulette. You never knew what you were going to get, but you always got some sleep. You're not truly hydrated until you've sipped a glass of Radithor, radioactive water that guarantees glowing reviews and possibly glowing bones. Sure, your teeth might fall out, but at least you'll never lose track of your own shadow. Let's wander into the world of 1920s wellness trends, where the future is here, the labels are shiny, and science is equal parts hope, optimism, and let's see what happens. On the countertop, nestled among the arsenic tonics and morphine lozenges, sits a slim glass bottle filled with clear, sparkling liquid, Radithor. Certified radioactive water, the label proclaims, as if radioactivity is just another vitamin your body's been missing. It's marketed as a miracle cure for fatigue, for headaches, for aging, for the general malaise of being alive before Netflix. The logic was radiant and simple. Radium glows in the dark, and so should you, on the inside. The more you drank, the more alive you'd feel. The advertisements were relentless. Testimonials from athletes, business tycoons, and even a few earnest doctors. One ad shows a robust man flexing in the sun, declaring, "I owe my vigor to Radithor." Another promises it'll put the spring back in your step, the shine in your hair, and possibly an afterglow in your smile. You twist off the cap and pour yourself a glass. The taste? Slightly metallic, but refreshing in a should this really be tingling sort of way. The aftertaste is pure placebo, chased with the thrill of scientific progress. For a fleeting moment, you're convinced. This is what health feels like, energized, invincible, and just a little buzzy. It's like drinking the future, if the future came with a faint hum and the possibility of seeing your own skeleton. The daily dose of Radithor wasn't just for the sickly, it was for the ambitious, the athletic, the exhausted. The ad copy promised that 1 glass a day would banish fatigue and restore youth. But why stop at one? Some fans of the stuff, desperate to feel their best, chugged bottle after bottle. One infamous Radithor enthusiast, a wealthy socialite and amateur golfer, drank up to 3 bottles a day. His testimonial, "It's like sunlight in a bottle." His doctor's testimonial, years later, "It's like a science experiment gone sideways." At first, the results seemed impressive. People felt invigorated, H's faded, and spirits soared. But after a few months, the side effects started. Teeth loosened, jawbones softened. The hair loss was outpaced only by the new, inexplicable glow you could see in a dark room. Friends might compliment you on your radiant complexion, not realizing you were, in fact, slightly radioactive. Of course, nobody wanted to believe the downside. The prostofcourse.com culture of the 1920s was hungry for progress, for anything that felt cutting-edge, futuristic, or even a little bit reckless. If you could bottle sunlight, why not drink it? If radium glowed, surely it must be good for you. It took years for people to realize that their newfound sparkle came with a price. Necrosis, anemia, and a sudden, urgent need for dentures. Doctors eventually caught on, though. For a while, they were among the biggest fans. Some even dosed themselves, convinced that radiating health was just good medicine. But the reports kept coming. Aches that wouldn't go away, teeth that refused to stay put, mysterious bone pain, and that glowing jaw in the mirror. The party was over, but the afterglow lingered. Still, the legend of Radithor remains. Proof that people will try anything if you promise enough energy, youth, and a little bit of glamour. It's a cautionary tale, but also a snapshot of an era obsessed with progress at any price. So next time you reach for a vitamin water or try a trendy supplement, remember, you're following in the footsteps of people who once drank literal radioactivity because the ad said it would make them sparkle. And in a way, it did, just not in any way they expected. Sleep tight, and don't forget to brush your teeth while you still have them. On Saturday afternoons, a well-dressed gentleman in a hat sets up shop in the town square, hawking bottles that promise to cure everything from arthritis to existential despair. The secret ingredient: hope, charisma, and a strong stomach. Picture it: the dusty heart of a small American town, sun beating down on a crowd gathering in anticipation. The local entertainment options are limited. There's the church bake sale, an especially competitive chicken chase, or the arrival of the traveling medicine man. If you're lucky, he arrives with a wagon painted in swirling gold letters. Dr. Bigby's panacea cures what ails ya. If you're not lucky, you get his cousin, Professor Pemberton's snake oil spectacular, which at least comes with a banjo and a sidekick named Pickles. The showman steps up, dressed in a suit that shines just a little too brightly for someone who's been living out of a wagon. His voice booms, drawing the crowd closer, young and old, the skeptical and the hopeful, all eager to see if he'll pull a rabbit out of a hat or a miracle out of a bottle. He begins with a story. Always a story. How he learned the secret recipe from a wise medicine woman deep in the mountains, or how a mysterious traveler from the Orient shared the formula in exchange for a favor. The crowd nods, wide-eyed, because everyone loves a secret, especially when it's for sale. With a flourish, he produces the bottle. It's small, filled with amber liquid that glows in the sunlight. The label promises relief from rheumatism, lumbago, indigestion, melancholy, and chronic grumpiness. It might also cure warts, headaches, and the feeling that your Brensbrat in-laws are coming to visit. The secret, he insists, is in the natural herbs and rare roots. He might mention extract of rattlesnake oil or genuine Peruvian bark. What he doesn't mention is that it's 80% alcohol, 10% syrup, and 10% mystery. The pitch is equal parts theatre and therapy. He tells the crowd they look tired, overworked, perhaps even a little pale. He's got a remedy for that. He spots a farmer with a limp and offers him a free sample. The farmer grimaces at the taste but manages a brave smile as the warmth of the whiskey kicks in. "I feel better already," he declares as the crowd claps, half convinced and fully entertained. The showman doesn't just sell the cure, he sells the dream of waking up tomorrow with no aches, no worries, and a sudden urge to dance the Charleston. He's a magician, a psychologist, a part-time weather forecaster. "One bottle will change your life," he promises, "but 2 will make you the envy of your neighbors." And, just when you start to doubt, his assistant steps up, a young woman, or sometimes a man in a suspiciously oversized moustache, and gives a glowing testimonial. She used to be bedridden, she explains, but now she can run, jump, and play the harmonica for hours. The crowd laughs, the hat is passed, and bottles begin to fly off the wagon. Nobody asks for a list of side effects. No one inquires about the ingredients. In the 1920s, the only thing more contagious than a cold is the hope that maybe, just maybe, this bottle is the one that will work. Regulation is miles away, both in distance and intention. The nearest doctor is still treating patients with leeches and leaky thermometers. So why not trust the man with the hat, the grin, and the bottles? When the bottles are gone and the money is counted, the showman tips his hat, thanks the crowd, and promises to return. By the time anyone realizes they're still tired, still achy, and maybe a little hungover, he's long gone, off to the next town, the next crowd, the next Saturday afternoon. So next time you see a miracle cure promising to fix everything but your credit score, remember the showman of the 1920s. Their real secret ingredient wasn't in the bottle, it was in the show. And sometimes, a little hope and a lot of whiskey was all anybody really wanted. Want to brighten your eyes? A drop of belladonna will do the trick. Just don't blink too hard, or you'll miss your next heartbeat. In the 1920s, looking good came with a shelf life. Let's tiptoe into the powder-scented, mirror-flecked world of vintage beauty, where the pursuit of glamour was less about contouring and more about a daily brush with the Grim Reaper. In this era, beauty standards demanded not just commitment, but genuine risk. You wanted a look that turned heads? You started with your own circulatory system. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, was the eye drop of choice for women hoping to achieve that wide-eyed, come-hither gaze immortalized by Hollywood starlets. Just a drop in each eye, and suddenly you're Betty Boop, but with the added drama of a thumping heart and a prescription for fainting couches. The reasoning was simple. Belladonna dilated the pupils, making eyes appear larger, darker, and more mysterious, a look as haunting as it was hazardous. That hint of danger became a fashionable flourish. And soon, makeup counters were hawking pupil brighteners alongside rouge and cold cream. The instructions were a mix of beauty tip and warning label. Apply 1 drop to each eye for dazzling allure. Side effects may include blurred vision, mild heart palpitations, and seeing the Grim Reaper at family gatherings. But eyes weren't the only battlefield. The cosmetics of the 1920s were filled with all sorts of chemical wonders, many of which had only recently been discovered, and none of which had ever been tested on anything more advanced than a stray cat. Arsenic, wafers promised to clear the complexion. Never mind that the clear complexion was mostly due to internal organ failure. Lead face powder gave skin that prized, pale, porcelain look. The downside? A slight tendency to die young and, along the way, experience peeling skin, anemia, and a persistent sense of doom. Let's talk lipstick. The most popular shades sparkled thanks to carmine, crushed beetles, and were set with a hint of mercury, because nothing says romance like toxic heavy metals on your mouth. Blushes contained cinnabar, a mercury sulfide compound that brought out the rosy glow right before bringing out the rash. Even face creams weren't innocent. Many included bismuth or zinc, and vanishing creams sometimes made users vanish for real. The beauty rituals themselves were an ordeal. You'd spend hours plucking, powdering, and painting, only to discover that the real test wasn't surviving the dance hall, but surviving the products. Magazines were packed with beauty, advice, columns, how to achieve luminous skin, secrets to seductive eyes, and, buried near the end, when to call the poison control hotline. The wildest part? No one batted an eye, unless they were wearing too much belladonna, in which case blinking was medically inadvisable. Of course, beauty came with social rewards. The perfect painted face was a ticket to the best parties, the snazziest speakeasies, and maybe a passing glance from a jazz musician or a Hollywood producer. There was a risk, yes. But isn't that what made it thrilling? The mystery, the allure, and the hope that this time your complexion would glow for all the right reasons and none of the medical ones. If you were a man, don't feel left out. Hair tonics promise to restore your virility and your hairline with a heady blend of lead, petrolatum, and a little testosterone in every sniff. Your scalp tingled, your hair darkened, and your pillowcases disintegrated overnight. As regulations slowly crept in and science began to catch up, beauty products evolved. Belladonna and lead faded from the shelves, replaced by less exciting but less lethal alternatives. But the memory remains. A world where looking good wasn't just expensive, it was a genuine gamble. So next time you swipe on some mascara or dab a little blush, give a grateful nod to the past, because in the 1920s, glamour was a full-contact sport, and the only thing more dangerous than chasing beauty was trusting the label. Here's looking at you, kid. Just don't look for too long. For those who long to cleanse the kidneys, swamp root offers a blend of mystery herbs and enough alcohol to count as breakfast. Just don't ask where the swamp part comes from. You'll sleep better not knowing. Let's step into the crisp, slightly musty morning of a 1920s household, where the day starts not with orange juice or oatmeal, but with a cordial swig from a bottle emblazoned with the grand title, Dr. Kilmer's Swamproot Kidney, Liver and Bladder Cure. It's the sort of label that feels both promising and vaguely threatening, featuring fonts so ornate they look like they've been rescued from the bottom of a bog themselves. If you believe the ads, and who didn't, in an age where snake oil was practically a food group, swamproot was the secret to vibrant health, endless energy, and a urinary system so clean it practically squeaked. The ingredients were as mysterious as the marketing. Botanical extracts is what the bottle claimed, but the real secret seemed to be a hearty pour of alcohol and a collection of roots and leaves you wouldn't feed to a goat. There's sarsaparilla, wild yam, possibly a rogue dandelion or two, and an alcohol content that would make a bartender blush. Pour yourself a dose and the liquid glugs out thick and brown, smelling like a forest floor after a hard rain. Or, as the family legend goes, like Uncle Henry's socks after a fishing trip. The ritual is simple: a shot glass at class, dawn, or any time you feel the urge to purify the blood. Down the hatch it goes. The taste is earthy, sharp, and alarmingly warming, as if your kidneys have suddenly enrolled in hot yoga. It doesn't so much cleanse as intimidate your organs into behaving. Maybe that's the secret. Fear is a great motivator, even for your bladder. The testimonials are wild. My kidneys have never felt better, beams one satisfied customer, looking suspiciously hydrated. Another swears swamp root restored his vigor, his marriage, and his ability to whistle while milking the cows. There's always a testimonial from a sprightly octogenarian who claims to have taken swamp root every morning for 40 years. Though if you read the fine print, she's actually only 38 and lived a hard life. But what did swamp root actually do? In an era before Google, you didn't question results if you felt a little lighter on your feet. The truth is, the alcohol content alone was enough to numb most discomfort, and the herbal blend had a mild laxative effect. Just enough to keep things moving and convince you the magic was working. If you noticed side effects, like a sudden urge to compose poetry or sleep through dinner that was chalked up to your kidneys eliminating toxins, which in practice meant you were just tipsy at breakfast. Of course, the swamp part of swamp root was a marketing masterstroke. It conjured visions of wild, untamed nature, secret formulas discovered in foggy wetlands by Dr. Kilmer himself, who, legend has it, was both a respected physician and an amateur botanist with a high tolerance for marsh water. The bottle, with its green and gold label, sat proudly on the shelf next to Lydia Pinkham's compound and a tin of Vicks Vapo Rub, a silent promise that your next trip to the outhouse would be an adventure, not a crisis. Even the advertisements were full of whimsy and hyperbole. Swamp root was nature's remedy, the great kidney cleanser, and, perhaps most optimistically, a blessing for mankind. For a while, it genuinely was, at least in the sense that it gave people hope, a buzz, and a break from daily drudgery. So the next time you reach for cranberry juice or complain about your multivitamin, remember the days when health came in a bottle and a little swamp in your morning routine was just what the doctor ordered. Sleep tight, and may your kidneys be forever cleansed, or at least comforted, by the legends of swamp root. Marketed as the cure for female complaints, this wildly popular tonic was part herbal blend, part whiskey, and all optimism. It did wonders for cramps, and even more for the bootlegging industry. Let's step into the parlor, where women gather for afternoon tea, gossip, and a discreet dose of the era's most famous ladies' remedy. In the 1920s, if you asked a woman what she took for her aches, pains, mood swings, or general malaise, she'd probably point to a shapely glass bottle of Lydia Pinkham's vegetable compound perched between the sugar bowl and a copy of the latest scandal sheet. Its pink and black label featured the confident gaze of Lydia herself, who looked like she'd seen it all and decided that, honestly, a stiff drink was the best way to face it. The original formula was an intoxicating blend of unicorn promises and whatever was handy in the apothecary's garden, roots, herbs, and a healthy pour of alcohol, all blended together with a generous helping of 19th century marketing genius. Its purpose? To treat female complaints, which, depending on the day, could mean anything from menstrual cramps and hot flashes to the vague, floating feeling known as hysteria. In the hands of Pinkham and her ad team, the mysterious aches of womanhood were suddenly curable with a daily tablespoon, preferably 2, if your husband was especially trying. Let's talk about the experience. You uncork the bottle and are greeted with an aroma that's halfway between a floral sachet and a shot of something you'd hide from your pastor. The taste is memorable. Bitter herbs and warming spirits, chasing down whatever pain, cramp, or unspoken rage is lurking in your lower back. You swallow, feeling a pleasant flush in your cheeks, and the world suddenly feels a little lighter, the furniture a bit softer, and your problems a shade less urgent. The magic of Lydia Pinkham's wasn't just in the ingredients, it was in the marketing. Advertisements promised women relief from female troubles and offered a rare sense of agency. In an era when doctors often dismissed women's symptoms as imaginary or prescribed a brisk walk and less reading, Lydia's compound gave women the power to treat themselves. Testimonials filled the newspapers, grateful wives, relieved daughters, and the occasional exasperated husband who just wanted his wife back. If you believed the ads, one swig could soothe not just your uterus but your entire household. But let's be honest, Lydia Pinkham's was also a brilliant loophole during Prohibition. When the government slammed the door on alcohol, the medicine cabinet opened a window. Suddenly, bottles of medicinal compounds were flying off shelves, with women, and more than a few men, toasting to their health and conveniently forgetting to measure the dose. Lydia's compound was 20% alcohol by volume, just enough to take the edge off a headache, a bad day, or a dry county ordinance. Of course, the claims of miracle cures were ambitious. While the herbs may have provided some relief, it's safe to say the whiskey worked faster. Did it actually regulate your cycle, or just make you care less about it? Was the return of your feminine bloom a result of herbal synergy, or the blush that comes with a midday tipple? Either way, women swore by it and kept coming back for more. The culture surrounding Lydia Pinkham's compound was quietly radical. It gave women something few products at the time offered: control. Control over their bodies, their moods, and, for a brief, boozy moment, their destiny. In a world where women's voices were often drowned out by men in white coats, Lydia Pinkham spoke directly to the sufferer, with a wink and a paw. So next time you see a pink bottle at the thrift store, or read about natural remedies online, tip your hat to Lydia and her vegetable compound, equal parts herbal relief, social rebellion, and old-fashioned good spirits. In the wild world of 1920s medicine, sometimes the best prescription was hope in a bottle, and just a splash more whiskey. Every newspaper is bursting with ads promising instant cures, guaranteed to add years to your life. The fine print is less reassuring if you can read it through the laudanum haze. Step into the bustling world of 1920s American advertising, where every page of the daily paper is a parade of hope, hype, and heroic fonts. Picture yourself at the breakfast table with a cup of burnt coffee, and the breakfast table with a cup of burnt coffee, latest edition of the Sunday Tribune. The news is dire, but the ads are absolutely electric. Dr. Marvel's life elixir, banishing baldness and bad luck since 1898. Try Carter's liver pills for that dead inside feeling. Youth in a bottle. Look 10 years younger, overnight, or your money back. Asterisk. Asterisk. Results not typical. Side effects may include hallucinations, bankruptcy, and existential regret. The sheer variety is dizzying. There are tonics for tired blood, syrups for nervous exhaustion, and ointments for ailments you're pretty sure were invented just to sell more ointment. Feeling sluggish? There's a potion for that. Hair thinning? Rub on this miraculous paste. Results may vary, but at least your scalp will tingle. Got female troubles, male malaise, or chronic gloominess? Help is just a mail order away. The boldest claims are matched only by the boldest illustrations. Robust, grinning families. Grandmothers leaping over fences. Men sprouting hair in real time. Every bottle has a story, and every story comes with a money-back guarantee, minus shipping and handling and, presumably, dignity. The pitchmen behind these ads are the real artists, part scientist, part storyteller, part escape artist. They promise everything short of immortality, no more back pain. Clear your complexion in days. Nerves of steel. Some ads even imply their elixir might improve your morals, cure shyness, or make you irresistible at barn dances. If you didn't have a problem, don't worry, the advertising will invent one for you. Are you feeling occasionally tired? Do you sometimes forget your umbrella? You may be suffering from subtle chronic malaise. Ask your pharmacist about Dr. Bigby's pep tonic. The testimonials are legendary. I was bedridden with ennui for years until I tried Swanson's Nervine. Now I walk 5 miles a day and play the piano upside down. Children, the elderly, and even house pets are shown benefiting from miraculous cures. Tiny photos of doctors, sometimes real, sometimes played by actors, sometimes a mustache drawn on with ink, add a veneer of authority. Recommended by physicians everywhere. Sure, if by everywhere you mean the small print at the bottom of the page, next to the legal disclaimer. Of course, the government is beginning to catch on. The Pure Food and Drug Act has made it illegal to claim you can resurrect the dead or guarantee permanent beauty. But clever wordplay keeps the dream alive. The labels now say, may help relieve, results may vary, or not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, but nobody's reading the small print when the headlines promise a new lease on life. The wildest ads are the ones that combine medical marvel with showbiz spectacle. Traveling patent medicine parades roll through town with banners, brass bands, and salesmen who double as magicians. They hand out free samples, collect coins, and vanish by sunrise, leaving behind a trail of empty bottles and optimistic citizens. It's marketing at its most unhinged, where the real miracle is convincing you to buy the next bottle. And yet, for all the exaggeration and snake oil, these patent medicines provided more than just a placebo. They offered hope. In a world where real doctors were scarce and diseases many, sometimes the best cure was simply the belief that something might work. So next time you scroll past a miracle cure ad on your phone, remember, it's nothing new. Advertising gone wild is a proud tradition. And the only thing that's really changed is the font size and maybe the laudanum. Sleep well, and don't believe everything you read unless it promises sweet dreams. Can't sleep? A drop of chloral hydrate will knock you out, reset your nervous system, and make you forget all your troubles, assuming you ever wake up again. Let's slip quietly into the boudoir of the 1920s, where the biggest threat to your well-being isn't crime or prohibition, it's your own relentless anxiety. Maybe it's the daily grind, maybe it's the jazz-age neighbors, or maybe it's just the existential terror that comes from reading too many patent medicine ads. Whatever the cause, insomnia and nervous exhaustion are all the rage. Doctors and advertisements have a simple, soothing solution: chloral hydrate, the original sleep like you've been hit by a truck remedy. You pad across the creaky floorboards, slip into your nightgown, and reach for the little bottle on your nightstand. The label promises restorative, gentle sleep for those suffering from overwrought nerves and temporary madness. The only madness here, in hindsight, is that this was over the counter. With the dropper in hand, you squint at the instructions. A few drops in water before bedtime, no mention of milligrams or side effects. If a little is good, surely a little more can't hurt, right? Famous last words. Chloral hydrate doesn't taste like much, but its effect is immediate and profound. It glides down the throat with all the subtlety of a lullaby delivered by a sledgehammer. Within minutes, your thoughts turn gauzy and your limbs go pleasantly limp. Your worries, the bills, the neighbors, the mysterious creaking in the attic, all dissolve into a velvety darkness. You don't so much fall asleep as disappear. It wasn't just for insomnia. Chloral hydrate was the miracle answer for a range of nervous disorders that, today, would land you in a therapist's office or on a meditation app. Hysteria, nervous collapse, and even the sort of general malaise that sets in after reading the morning paper could all be banished by a dose of this colorless, tasteless knockout punch. Even children, caught up in a storm of nerves or nightmares, might be dosed with a bit of the gentle sedative before bed. In the world of the 1920s, good parenting sometimes meant everyone in the house passed out before midnight. Of course, nothing this effective comes without a catch. Chloral hydrate is less mild sedative and more chemical time travel. Wake up the next morning, and you might not remember what year it is or why your pajamas are on backwards. Users reported dreams that ran the spectrum from delightful fever fantasy to woke up convinced I was a duck. Side effects included confusion, a persistent grogginess, and, if you overdid it, a long stay in the rest home for what doctors gently called prolonged sleep. But in an age before therapy was mainstream, before yoga mats outnumbered bottles of whiskey, and before self-care meant anything more than washing behind your ears, chloral hydrate was considered the height of scientific progress. If it could send you to sleep with one drop, why not two? Why not use it for the fussy aunt, the anxious husband, the child with night terrors, the overworked housewife? or anyone who just wanted a break from the grind. The miracle was that it worked. The mystery was whether you'd remember where you left your shoes when you woke up. Naturally, this miracle drug caught the attention of writers, artists, and anyone else interested in spending more time asleep than awake. Writers claimed it inspired surreal, dreamlike prose, though critics suspected it just made them easier to ignore deadlines. Some of the era's great works were scribbled in a chloral haze, their authors unsure if they were writing a novel or a recipe for beef stew. So next time you find yourself staring at the ceiling, mind racing, remember the miracle and the mild terror of chloral hydrate. In the 1920s, if you couldn't sleep, you didn't count sheep. You counted drops, whispered goodnight to your worries, and let chemistry tuck you in. Sweet dreams, and set an alarm. You might need it. In the 1920s, doctor could mean has a medical license or knows how to spell the word doctor. If they have a mustache and a black bag, you're probably in safe hands, or at least interesting ones. Let's knock on the door of healthcare in the Roaring Twenties, where a house call from the family doctor is a blend of hope, suspense, and accidental comedy. The term general practitioner covers a wide range, from the highly educated professional trained at a distant medical school to your neighbor who once read a pamphlet about leeches and decided to order a stethoscope by mail. You might call for the doctor and get anyone from a sober, steady-eyed physician to Doc Fillmore, who swears by whiskey compresses and a secret salve that smells suspiciously like boot polish. Credentials? Optional. Some doctors proudly display diplomas in Latin. Others display an impressive collection of hats, a willingness to travel by bicycle, and a handshake strong enough to reset your shoulder. In some towns, the only difference between a barber and a doctor is that one cuts hair, and the other is legally allowed to bleed you for humor imbalance. Either way, you're getting a story. The doctor's bag itself is an object of fascination and terror. Leather, scuffed, packed with glass syringes, rubber tubing, and an assortment of vials with labels like mercurochrome, chloroform, and Grandpa's special liniment. There might be a real thermometer, or there might just be an old nail polished to a shine, and every bag contains a mystery bottle of tonic that's equal parts cure and courage, designed to put hair on your chest or, at the very least, a blush in your cheeks. A house call is an event. The doctor arrives in a cloud of pipe smoke, tipping his hat to the children and asking after the dog. He takes a quick look around to see if there are any visible signs of contagious disease, or, more commonly, to see what's for dinner. Diagnosis is a theatrical performance, a tap on the chest, a frown at your tongue, a question about your nerves. The treatment, it depends on the mood, the weather, and how many house calls he's already made that day. Sore throat? Gargle this. Headache? Lie down and avoid thinking. Aching joints? Here's a bottle of liniment with a warning to keep away from open flames. For ailments that don't respond to whiskey or willpower, the doctor has tricks up his sleeve, a poultice of onions, a cup of medicinal wine, maybe even a little morphine for the truly desperate. Got the vapors? Rest and fresh air. Got an infection? Hope and prayer. Sometimes the cure is more dangerous than the complaint, especially if it involves arsenic, mercury, or a quick tooth extraction with whatever's handy. Children often dreaded the doctor, but adults took comfort in his visits, if only because it meant someone else was in charge for a while. The bill would arrive later, handwritten and open to negotiation. Did I really need 2 doses of that nerve tonic? You'd ask. Well, it didn't kill you, the doctor would reply, which in the 1920s counted as a success. And then there are the doctors with a flair for adventure. They dabble in dentistry, dab hands at veterinary work, and don't blink at midwifery. One day, they're removing a splinter. The next, they're setting a bone, delivering a baby, or refereeing a family argument. Medical textbooks are rare, but tall tales are abundant. If a procedure didn't work, there's always a story about old Mrs. Peabody, who survived on boiled dandelions and prayer alone. In short, the family doctor was part healer, part folk hero, and part local gossip. When he left, the house felt a little safer, or at least a little more interesting. And if the cough didn't go away, well, there was always another bottle in the cabinet, another neighbor who knew a cure, or, failing that, a fresh batch of hope and a good night's sleep. So next time you trust your symptoms to a certified professional, remember, once upon a time, all you really needed was a business card, a strong moustache, and the nerve to call yourself doctor. Children's remedies weren't shy about dosing kids with codeine, morphine, or a quick swig of whiskey. The only thing more dangerous than a child with a cold was the cure. Let's imagine a 1920s parlor on a school night. The oil lamp is burning, the windows are rattling in the wind, and there's a sound from the corner that strikes fear into every parent's heart. A child coughing. It starts innocently enough. A tickle in the throat, a little sneeze. But in a world before antibiotics and child-safe dosages, this could quickly turn into a battle between the family medicine cabinet and the family's peace of mind. Enter the dazzling world of children's cough remedies, where the real adventure begins after bedtime. Mom shuffles over in her slippers, rummages through the wooden cupboard, and pulls out a tin of soothing syrup or infant's comfort drops. The labels are bright and reassuring, featuring cheerful cherubs and curly fonts. You might expect a little honey, maybe some lemon. What you get instead is codeine, morphine, a dash of chloroform, and enough alcohol to put a horse into a light nap. Junior, in his flannel pajamas, eyes the medicine with suspicion, but he knows the drill: open wide, swallow, and brace for impact. The effect is swift. Within minutes, the cough quiets, eyelids droop, and the wild energy of childhood gives way to the heavy tranquility of medicinal rest. For parents, this is a small mercy, a break from worry, from sleepless nights, from the dread of every little sniffle escalating into something worse. For the child, it's a journey into the land of dreams, complete with the occasional psychedelic side effect. Who needs bedtime stories when your brain is busy rearranging the wallpaper? Of course, the real wildness wasn't just in the dosing, but in the variety. One week it's Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup, with its famously calming opium base. The next, it's Dr. Bull's cough drops, with a menthol blast that doubles as a sinus cleaner and a mild sedative. For the truly restless, there's always a bottle of medicinal whiskey on hand, conveniently dispensed in teaspoons and entirely legal, even for children, if you called it medicine. For school-aged kids, the experience didn't end at home. Teachers were known to keep a tin of lozenges in their desks for emergencies. Nurses' offices in the 1920s were more like side hustles for amateur pharmacists, dishing out whatever syrup or tablet was left over from the last cold season. You might walk in with a sore throat and walk out feeling no pain, physically or emotionally, thanks to a hefty dose of codeine and the faint hope that your mother wouldn't notice you napping at dinner. If you think this sounds reckless, you're right. But at the time, it was seen as compassionate. Children's bodies were mysterious. Colds were ominous. And every parent dreaded the spectre of pneumonia or scarlet fever. When the choice was between a sleepless night or a quiet, medicated slumber, most parents reached for whatever worked, even if it came with a small risk of waking up in a new dimension. The marketing was relentless. Safe, gentle, effective, claimed the ads, recommended by doctors everywhere. they insisted, with pictures of stern, bearded men holding children who looked suspiciously tranquilized. No mention of habit-forming substances or the long-term effects of regular opiate consumption before the age of 10. For many families, the medicine cabinet was a Pandora's box, opened whenever the night got too noisy. Looking back, it's a miracle any child survived a 1920s winter. The era's remedies were more Russian roulette than science. But somehow, families muddled through. Today, we have bubblegum-flavored ibuprofen and strict dosage charts. But back then, all you needed was a teaspoon and nerves of steel. So the next time you hand a child a grape-flavored cough drop, remember the kid in the corner, sleeping soundly, peacefully, and maybe just a little bit too peacefully, thanks to the era's remedies. Because in the 1920s, when it came to children's health, the cure really could be more exciting than the cold. Behind the counter, your pharmacist keeps a collection of powders and potions strong enough to drop an ox. For a nickel, he'll hand over whatever ails you, or invent something on the spot. Let's step through the swinging door of your local 1920s apothecary, where the line between trusted medical professional and enthusiastic amateur chemist is as blurry as the handwriting on a prescription pad. The pharmacist, in his crisp white coat, is the unofficial wizard of the block. The glass jars lining the shelves are filled with mysterious powders, glimmering crystals, and liquids in every color of the mood ring spectrum. Some are marked cure-all, some have ominous Latin names, and a few are simply labeled for external use only, which, in the 1920s, was more of a suggestion than a rule. There's a comforting rattle as the pharmacist pulls out a drawer. Calomel, mercury chloride, for when you need to cleanse the bowels with authority. Quinine, for fevers and chills. Morphine and cocaine, in tidy little envelopes, for headaches and heartbreaks. With a practiced hand, he mixes up a draft, sprinkles a little of this, adds a splash of that, and maybe, just for good measure, a whiff of strychnine, because it'll really put the pep back in your step. The customer approaches the counter, complaining of anything from stomach aches to general nervousness to a toothache that just won't quit. After a short, confidential conversation, the pharmacist produces a small paper bag or glass vial, gives some vague but reassuring instructions. Take 2 after supper and don't operate heavy machinery or horses, and slides it across the counter. If you have a little extra cash, he might offer you something imported and exotic, like blue mass pills for melancholy, a delightful blend of honey, licorice, and yes, more mercury. No prescription? No problem. Regulations exist, but they're mostly decorative. As long as you're not obviously foaming at the mouth, the world is your chemical oyster. The pharmacist might even customize your treatment. A little less arsenic for the young lady. A little more morphine for grandpa. Everyone gets something tailored. After all, personalized medicine is just good customer service, even if it occasionally borders on creative homicide. Kids weren't left out. The pharmacist was happy to whip up a children's soothing powder, generally a calming blend of opium and sugar, perfect for teething or for long train rides where you don't want to hear a peep until Omaha. The family dog might even get his own tincture for fleas or nerves, assuming he could keep down the quinine. Let's not forget the unofficial menu. Cures for womanly troubles, manly vigor, and tired blood that were just code for whatever the patient wanted to fix. Some people just wanted to feel something. Anything. Others were genuinely suffering and had nowhere else to turn. In the absence of modern diagnostics and evidence-based medicine, the pharmacist was a beacon of hope, offering a cocktail of relief, risk, and a little bit of showmanship. The back room was where the real magic happened. There, The pharmacist experimented like a mad scientist, testing out new concoctions on himself, his family, and sometimes, by accident, the cat. Unmarked jars, mysterious stains, and the lingering scent of camphor and liniment filled the air. If something worked, it got a label. If it didn't, well, there were always more customers. Eventually, the government started to catch on, passing laws about purity, labeling, and who exactly was allowed to sell heroin lozenges to children. But for a golden age, the pharmacist's secret stash was both a blessing and a gamble. A place where miracles were measured by the teaspoon and the cure might just be more memorable than the disease. So next time you complain about waiting for your prescription at a modern pharmacy, remember the days when the only thing between you and oblivion was a nickel and a handshake, and the pharmacist who knew just how much was too much, probably. Balding? Rub some lead acetate into your hairline and watch the magic happen. Unless the magic is just chronic fatigue and memory loss. Worth it for luscious locks, right? Let's drift into the boudoir or barbershop of the roaring 20s, where the air is thick with pomade and optimism, and personal grooming is equal parts science, spectacle, and wishful thinking. The shelves are crowded with bottles and jars promising vigorous hair, youthful shine, and guaranteed restoration of virility, because nothing says peak manhood like a full head of hair and a faint metallic taste in your mouth. It starts innocently enough. You catch sight of yourself in the mirror, forehead growing, confidence shrinking, but fear not. A quick trip to the corner pharmacy offers hope in the form of Professor Gray's Invincible Hair Tonic or Dr. Albright's Magical Growth Elixir, both starring the secret ingredient of the day, lead acetate, charmingly marketed as sugar of lead. There's no warning label, just enthusiastic promises and the smiling face of a man with a suspiciously perfect pompadour. The instructions are simple, if slightly alarming. Pour a liberal amount into your hands and massage thoroughly into the scalp. Repeat daily for best results, or until you notice a tingling sensation, hair growth, or the urge to write poetry about thunderstorms. The scent is a chemical bouquet, half cologne, half paint thinner, with a whiff of something best described as antique battery. The texture is both slick and sticky, leaving you wondering whether you've just taken a step toward hair regrowth or a future as a paperweight. The appeal isn't just for men, women too, hoping for thicker braids or shinier bobs. Dabble in tonics and lotions brimming with restorative minerals and nourishing salts. Some formulas promise to banish grey, others to stimulate dormant follicles. Many are just oil and perfume, but the heavy hitters, loaded with lead, sulfur, and copper salts, are the real gamble. The ads feature radiant women and dashing men, all beaming as if they know something you don't. Spoiler: they probably just have better wigs. And here's the wild part. Lead actually does darken hair, at least for a while. It bonds with sulfur in the scalp to create a natural-looking color. Your hair seems thicker, richer, and glossier. Friends might compliment your new youthful look, blissfully unaware that your memory is starting to blur, and you're getting headaches every time you pass the hardware store. The side effects, of course, are less glamorous. Chronic fatigue, anemia, abdominal pain, and that fuzzy-headed feeling that no amount of hair volume can fix. Some users developed tremors or forgot where they left their shoes. Small sacrifices in the quest for that perfect coif. Doctors, when they finally caught on, blamed the mysterious symptoms on nervous exhaustion or modern life, while barbers shrugged and reached for another bottle. But vanity is stubborn, and hope springs eternal from the scalp. There's always another tonic, another ad, promising miraculous restoration, another chance to beat genetics, or at least camouflage them with a new part. Rival brands escalate, adding more ingredients. If a little lead is good, why not try mercury, borax, or even radium. At some point, hair care becomes a competitive sport, and your scalp is the arena. Eventually, as the medical world wises up and the lawsuits roll in, lead-based tonics begin to fade from the shelves. Science triumphs, replaced by the more innocent snake oils of the modern era, caffeine shampoos, rosemary sprays, and the undying hope that this time, maybe, just maybe, your hair will come back thicker, stronger, and less likely to poison you. So next time you worry about a little thinning, take comfort. You can always buy a hat, a wig, or just embrace the breeze. Because in the 1920s, a good hair day might last forever, or at least until you forget what day it is. Sleep well, and let your dreams be luscious, even if your locks are not. Last night's party went too hard? This morning's fix is a glass of castor oil and a breath of chloroform. Side effects include time travel, confusion, and questionable decisions before noon. Let's set the scene. It's a bleary-eyed morning in 1924, and you wake up to the sound of your own regrets tap dancing in your head. The echoes of jazz, laughter, and bathtub gin still linger in the air. Your mouth feels like you've been chewing on sawdust. Your tongue is the consistency of old felt, and your brain is writing angry letters to the rest of your organs. There's only one thing to do. Drag yourself to the kitchen, past the suspiciously empty punch bowl, and fumble through the cupboard for the hangover cure that everyone swears by, but no one actually remembers taking. First up is the bottle of castor oil, a viscous yellow liquid that pours with all the enthusiasm of cold molasses. The idea is simple. Flush out last night's sins with a gentle purgative. The reality? Castor oil works fast, loud, and with absolutely no concern for your dignity. You take a spoonful, choke it down, and wait. Within minutes, you're wishing you'd made better life choices. Your stomach gurgles in protest, and you begin to understand why the phrase "cleanse the system" sounds more like a warning than a promise. But the 1920s hangover cure isn't finished. Enter chloroform, the original nap in a bottle. In a time when over-the-counter meant anything goes, a few drops of chloroform were recommended for headaches, nerves, and, of course, the existential pain of facing a new day with last night's decisions still echoing in your mind. The directions? Add a drop or two to a sugar cube, pop it in your mouth, and brace yourself. Sleep follows quickly, or at least a state of consciousness where your brain takes a brief holiday. Some people woke up feeling better. Some woke up in 1930. The logic behind this dynamic duo is both brutal and elegant. Step 1. Castor oil purges your insides. Step 2. Chloroform persuades your brain to ignore what your body is doing. You're left floating in a state somewhere between alive and recently exercised. The world looks softer, your head feels lighter, and you can almost convince yourself that breakfast is a good idea until the castor oil reminds you that it is, in fact, still in charge. Of course, there were other options for the adventurous. Some people swore by vinegar and pepper tea, which tasted exactly as you'd imagine and worked mostly by convincing you that nothing could be worse than another sip. Others reached for hair of the dog, mixing whatever spirits were left in the decanter with a raw egg and a desperate prayer. There were even patent pills, packed with caffeine, quinine, and a bit of strychnine, guaranteed to stimulate and restore. If they didn't fix your hangover, they at least gave you enough jitters to forget about it. It's worth noting that the hangover cure market was driven by necessity. The 1920s were the golden age of the party. Prohibition meant everyone was drinking. No one was talking about it, and absolutely no one was prepared for the aftermath. If you woke up still wearing your flapper dress or with your suspenders tied around your head, you weren't alone. Society demanded a solution, and medicine cabinets delivered. regardless of whether science approved. The wildest part? People trusted these cures, passing them down like family heirlooms or secret handshakes. My mother swore by castor oil. My uncle never left home without a flask of chloroform. The family dog, wisely, avoided them all. Modern hangover cures might taste better and work slower, but at least they don't double as time machines. So the next time you wake up foggy and reach for some water and toast, remember the party animals of the past, chasing their headaches with a purge and a plunge into chemical oblivion. In the 1920s, the morning after was its own kind of adventure, and sometimes the only cure was to forget you ever needed one. Every home keeps a remedy for tuberculosis on hand. Ingredients: cocaine, heroin, arsenic, and just a pinch of optimism. Spoiler alert: the TB usually wins. Let's wander into a 1920s parlor, where a delicate cough from the next room sends a chill down everyone's spine. Tuberculosis, consumption, if you wanted to sound poetic, was the lurking dread of the era, the villain in every family's story. If you didn't know someone who'd wasted away coughing into a handkerchief, you soon would. But in the grand tradition of hope and desperation, the medicine cabinet was ready for battle, stocked with tonics so strong they could knock out a fever, or, at the very least, make you forget you had one. The shelf is crowded with glass bottles promising relief, renewal, and at least one good night's sleep before the next fit of coughing. Each one is a masterpiece of marketing: gold-embossed fonts, illustrations of rosy-cheeked patients staring bravely into the future, and names like Dr. Proudfoot's Pulmonary Elixir and Miracle Syrup for weak lungs. If the labels are to be believed, you could transform from pale and withered to plump and hearty in just a few doses. The fine print, usually hidden behind a swirl of optimistic calligraphy, admits that you may experience mild heart palpitations, gentle euphoria, or rare spontaneous fits of jazz improvisation. The core ingredients? A veritable who's who of controlled substances. Cocaine for the energy boost, heroin to soothe the pain and suppress the cough, arsenic for its stimulating effects, or possibly just as a dare, and enough sugar and flavoring to make you forget the actual taste. If you were truly lucky, your tonic might also include digitalis, strychnine, or a shot of alcohol for external and internal use. The label claims, because why waste a good remedy by limiting it to just one route? The daily ritual went something like this: a teaspoon before breakfast, another at lunch, and one more at bedtime. Maybe a little extra if the cough got bad or if Aunt Mabel looked particularly worried. The first dose numbed your throat and made your hands a little shaky. The second loosened your tongue, and by the third, you were ready to write poetry, compose jazz, or just stare at the wallpaper until morning. You might not be cured, but you were, for a little while, almost content. Children weren't spared. Child's lung syrup came with a cheery drawing of a bouncing toddler. Never mind that the syrup was 20% alcohol with a hint of laudanum. Families dosed babies, grandmothers, and anyone who looked a little peaky. TB wards at the hospital were crowded, but so were family parlours, filled with the faint smell of camphor, cough drops, and a persistent optimism that bordered on denial. Even the most dedicated believers eventually realized that most of these cures were good at one thing: making time pass in a haze. Some patients swore they felt better, at least for a few glorious hours. Others simply didn't care anymore. After all, the real medicine was hope. A hope that, despite the odds, someone would beat the odds. If you survived, it was a miracle. If you didn't, at least you spent your final weeks floating above your troubles. Doctors, for their part, did what they could. They'd prescribe fresh air, mountain retreats, and good cheer, but they also handed out prescriptions for tonics and potions that might have killed a horse. No one knew what would work, so everyone tried everything. Looking back, tuberculosis tonics are a monument to human stubbornness. We'll swallow anything: cocaine, arsenic, heroin, hope, if it means another day, another chance, another breath. So tonight, be grateful that your medicine cabinet doesn't contain both the cure and the cause. And if you hear a cough in the dark, just remember, sometimes the best medicine is simply living to see the sunrise, even if you do it with a little jazz in your step and a lot of questionable substances in your bloodstream. Kids line up for a sweet drink at the pharmacy counter. The energy comes from coca leaf, cola nut, and enough sugar to turn a hamster into a jazz pianist. Let's wander back into the bustling, clattering world of the 1920s American drugstore, a place where the air smells like malt, the tile floor is slick with a century of spilled syrups, and the most exciting part of the week is a visit to the soda fountain. No self-respecting pharmacy would be complete without its long marble counter, chrome stools, and the whir of the soda jerk shaking up the day's most potent concoctions. Forget Gatorade and Red Bull. Here, your pick-me-up is mixed by hand, delivered with a wink, and, if you're lucky, contains more than a trace of something banned in 4 states. The star of the show is sarsaparilla, the old-school answer to energy drinks. Sarsaparilla is a fizzy, earthy sweet brew that promises to invigorate and refresh, with a secret blend of roots, spices, and probably a few family secrets. It's the drink of choice for cowboys, kids, and anyone who wants to feel like they're surviving a cattle drive, even if they've never left Main Street. Next to it on the menu is the famed coca wine, a pre-prohibition delight with just a touch of actual coca leaf for flavor. Energizing, restorative, delicious, the ads proclaim, neglecting to mention that coca leaf means you'll be bouncing off the ceiling before you finish your straw. For the more daring, there's always something new bubbling behind the counter. How about a phosphate? A tart, tangy soda made with fruit syrup and a dash of phosphoric acid, guaranteed to pucker your cheeks and clear your sinuses. Or maybe a glass of nerve tonic, loaded with cola nut extract, a natural source of caffeine that makes today's energy drinks look like chamomile tea. Some druggists even experiment with pepsin fizz for digestion and a not-so-subtle afternoon buzz. The kids love it. The adults do too, though they pretend it's just for digestive health. In truth, everyone's looking for a jolt of energy to power through the day, or at least enough sugar to make them forget about the piles of laundry and the neighbors' jazz records. The place is always humming with noise. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the insistent chatter of customers debating whether to get their soda with extra syrup, double foam, or a splash of medicinal extract for that real boost. And let's not forget the early ancestors of modern cola. Coca-Cola and Pepsi aren't just drinks, they're pharmacy creations, first sold as patent medicines and brain tonics. Coca-Cola's original formula boasted a refreshing kick of coca leaf and cola nut, a double punch of stimulation and euphoria, topped off with enough sugar to make your teeth vibrate in their sockets. Early marketing promised to cure headaches, relieve exhaustion, and banish melancholy. It's little wonder everyone was so eager for a refill. Parents, of course, claimed to worry. "Don't drink too many, you'll never sleep," they'd say, right before sipping their own adult version with an extra shot of medicinal wine or a dash of bitters. Meanwhile, the local soda jerk was the closest thing to a celebrity bartender, part chemist, part confidant, and always in on the secret of what really went into the day's special. In an era when the science of nutrition was mostly guesswork and the rules about stimulants were even looser, the pharmacy soda fountain was a temple of energy, sugar, and possibility. People lined up not just for the drinks, but for a taste of modernity. A liquid promise that tomorrow would be brighter, faster, and maybe just a little bit fizzy. So the next time you grab a can of energy drink or eye a bottle of soda, tip your hat to the days when every sweet sip was a cocktail of caffeine, coca, and hope. In the 1920s, the real energy came from the corner drugstore, a fizzing glass, and the unshakable belief that you could handle anything as long as you had enough syrup and a straw. It's 1923. The FDA is barely a suggestion, and regulation means don't get caught. If you can print a label, you can sell a tonic. Welcome to the medicine market of the Roaring Twenties, where the shelves are crammed with as many loopholes as they are bottles, and the only thing stricter than a pharmacist's mustache is the code of silence when someone asks about side effects. The government, still fresh off the excitement of banning booze, hasn't quite figured out how to tame the stampede of medical miracle makers. If you're creative, persuasive, or just own a printing press, you can go from snake oil salesman to doctor overnight. The only real law? Don't make your customers so sick that they can't buy more. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 is on the books, sure, but its teeth are still coming in. Labels have to be honest-ish. If a tonic is 30% alcohol, you're supposed to mention it somewhere on the bottle. Ideally in a font size small enough to require a microscope. As for the miracle claims, well, as long as you don't promise resurrection, you're in the clear. So the quacks get creative. Some claim their tonic may aid vitality and encourage a healthy disposition. Others say it soothes the nerves and imparts courage, which, in 1923, is usually code for contains just enough morphine to make you politely ignore your neighbor's jazz band. Regulation is less about enforcing rules and more about inventing the loopholes to get around them. The FDA, such as it is, can't keep up with the barrage of claims, cures, and secret formulas flooding the market. The competition is fierce. Every brand races to outdo the next, adding new exotic ingredients or even more imaginative promises. Now, with added lithium, shouts one ad, while another offers thymalized elixir for modern nerves, a fancy way to say contains stuff you wouldn't let near your pet goldfish. Traveling Medicine shows 2 testimonials and miracle recoveries, all while keeping the real formula under lock and key. If you have a charismatic sales pitch, a colorful wagon, or an eye-catching display, you're set. Doctors themselves are often caught in the middle. Some try to keep up with the law, but many have a side business in specialty tonics, handed out from the office, the back of the pharmacy, or even the family dinner table. As long as you slap for external use only on a bottle, or at least don't claim it cures the plague, you're pretty much untouchable. Enforcement? Good luck. Inspectors are few, far between, and sometimes a little too fond of the samples they're meant to police. Cases take years to work through the courts. If someone is actually prosecuted, it's usually because their tonic killed a politician, made headlines for all the wrong reasons, or started glowing in the dark. Even then, the most likely punishment is a strongly worded letter and a suggestion to relocate your operations. And yet, in this wild west of medicine, the American public is endlessly optimistic. If something sounds too good to be true, that's just good marketing. People want to believe in miracles, especially if they come with a shiny label and a pleasant aftertaste. Placebo effect? More like placebo hope. And if the cure doesn't work, there's always another bottle on the next shelf, another label, another chance to roll the dice. It won't be until the 1930s and 40s that regulation finally gets serious. Until then, quackery is as American as apple pie, or at least as American as root beer with a suspicious tingle. So next time you glance at a bottle of vitamins or a trendy wellness supplement, remember, there was a time when the wildest claim was just the beginning, and the law was mostly there to make things interesting. In 1923, the only real regulation was caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. Good luck, and may your tonics always be, at least mostly, what they claim to be. When medicine runs out, just ask Grandma. Her cough syrup is 3 parts bootleg whiskey, 1 part peppermint, and a pinch of whatever she found under the sink. Works every time, or never. Let's settle into the cozy chaos of a 1920s kitchen, where the smell of cinnamon, paraffin, and just a hint of regret fills the air. It's cold season, or allergy season, or simply another Tuesday, and the medicine cabinet is looking a little sparse. The pharmacy is closed. The mail-order tonic hasn't arrived, and the only doctor in town is laid up with his own bottle of medicinal bourbon. Who you gonna call? Not the ghost of modern science. You're calling for Grandma, and her legendary moonshine still, tucked in the cellar between the laundry mangle and the pickled beets. Grandma's approach to medicine is equal parts folklore, improvisation, and raw defiance of both the law and common sense. She doesn't need instructions, she's got muscle memory and generations of trial and error. The first step is always the same. Head down to the basement, where the moonshine is quietly percolating in a copper still. The still is a family heirloom, older than the piano in the parlor, and far more reliable. The base of any good remedy is clear and strong. 3 parts bootleg whiskey, straight from the tap. So fiery it could sterilize wounds, nerves, or a small barnyard animal. Grandma tastes a spoonful for quality control, coughs once, and nods. It's ready. To this, she adds a generous swirl of peppermint extract. Maybe it soothes the throat, maybe it just masks the taste. After that, the magic happens. A pinch of camphor, a dash of turpentine for congestion, and perhaps a sprig of horehound, or a suspiciously sticky spoonful of honey that's been hiding at the back of the pantry since before the Great War. The mixture is poured into a glass jar, tightly sealed, and labeled with whatever's handy. Cough syrup, Grandma's elixir, or sometimes just a skull and crossbones for the extra spicy batch. The dosing is guesswork. A spoonful for the little ones, 2 for grown-ups, and just a sniff for the dog. Grandma swears it'll fix what ails you, head colds, sore throats, heartbreak, or the winter blues. And to her credit, nobody in the family ever dies of a cough. Though it's hard to say if it's the cure or the terror of another spoonful that keeps them healthy. The real genius of Grandma's secret recipe is its adaptability. If there's no whiskey, you use brandy, rum, or anything vaguely flammable. No peppermint? Try clove, eucalyptus, or a splash of whatever tincture the neighbor left behind last Christmas. The key is confidence. Serve it hot, with a thick quilt and a bedtime story, and most ailments will be scared off by morning. Or at least you'll sleep through the worst of it. Neighbors whisper about Grandma's skills, but come flu season, her porch is crowded with people just stopping by for a visit. A sip of her syrup is the local rite of passage. Surviving a dose is considered proof of robust constitution and good sense. It's medicine, yes, but it's also a social event, a family tradition, and a minor act of rebellion against both germs and prohibition agents. The truth? Grandma's remedies probably did as much for the spirit as the body. Laughter, care, and a hot toddy at bedtime have cured more ills than most doctors' prescriptions. Just don't ask too many questions about what's actually in the jar. So, next time you open a bottle of over-the-counter cough syrup, remember Grandma and her moonshine still. A one-woman pharmaceutical powerhouse with a talent for comfort, a taste for trouble, and an endless supply of remedies. They may not have passed an FDA inspection, but in a world without answers, hope and whiskey went a long way. No medicine cabinet was safe, not even from pets. If you're lucky, the cat just naps for a week. If you're not, well, at least you won't have to clean the litter box. Let's slip into a typical 1920s household, where curiosity is not only a trait but a full-time occupation for every animal under the roof. The medicine cabinet, a glittering treasure trove of bottles, powders, and tonics, sits just above the sink, far out of reach of children, but well within the strategic climbing range of the family's most devious member, the cat. Or perhaps the family dog, who's convinced that everything on earth is edible until proven otherwise. One fateful morning, you discover the aftermath. A paw print trail across the bathroom counter, a tipped-over bottle of Dr. Ransom's calming drops, and, stretched out on a sunbeam, a cat sleeping the sleep of the profoundly medicated. The label on the bottle, laudanum, an opium tincture favored for everything from headaches to heartbreak, explains a lot. In the 1920s, laudanum is as common as aspirin and twice as exciting. It promises relief from pain, sleeplessness, nerves, and the general woes of modern life. For a 12-pound tabby, it promises a trip to dreamland with a layover in the Twilight Zone. At first, the family is worried. Is Whiskers breathing? Why hasn't he moved in hours? But as the day rolls on, panic gives way to relief. Then a kind of awkward appreciation. The cat, normally a 3 a.m. menace, now lies serenely, unmoving, except for an occasional dramatic sigh. The dog, not to be outdone, licks up the last drops from the tile and spends the afternoon staring blissfully at the wallpaper. Laudanum is not the only medicine to tempt the local fauna. Cats, with their delicate stomachs and appalling judgment, are experts at opening cabinets and investigating new smells. Dogs eat first, ask questions later. Liniments, bitters, cough drops, and even sarsaparilla syrups become accidental experiments in veterinary medicine. Sometimes, the outcome is hilarious. A dog that runs in circles for hours. A cat who insists on singing jazz in the hallway at midnight. Other times, the results are, well, less than ideal. The family learns to adapt. Bottles are pushed to the back of the highest shelves. Tins are latched shut. And the medicine is not for pets, becomes a household mantra, repeated after every surprise vet bill. The neighbors, of course, hear everything and offer helpful advice. Rub a little mustard on her nose, suggests one. Give him some milk and a prayer, says another. For all the wild remedies available to humans, pet care in the 1920s is strictly improvisational, with most animals surviving on luck, constitution, and the ability to sleep off even the strongest opiates. Of course, some pets develop a taste for the high life. Cats nap more deeply, dogs become friendlier, and even the family parrot starts telling better jokes. But the medicine cabinet is a constant source of temptation and trouble, leading to legendary tales of survival. Remember the time Fido found the cough syrup? Becomes part of family lore. Retold every holiday as the pets lounge nearby, eyes narrowed in suspicion. Eventually, common sense prevails. Mostly, the bottles move to locked cupboards, and the family doctor is on speed dial, ready to reassure and divided by, or scold. But every now and then, someone forgets to close a drawer, and the great pet adventure begins anew. So the next time you look at your cat sprawled across a sunny spot, or your dog sleeping off his latest culinary experiment, remember the mysterious case of the family pet and the laudanum, a tale of curiosity, chemistry, and the indestructible optimism of the household animal. In the wild world of 1920s medicine, nobody was truly safe. not even from themselves. The real miracle cure in the 1920s? Surviving the medicine. If you made it through childhood with all your organs and only a mild tremor, you were basically a superhero. Let's settle into the heavy quilt of post-illness. That strange time when you're on the mend. But every trip to the medicine cabinet still feels like rolling dice with fate. In a world where the cure was often as questionable as the disease, recovery took on a new meaning. More marathon than sprint, with the finish line just out of sight and the hazards growing fuzzier every day. For many families, the act of getting better wasn't a matter of triumph, but of quietly, stubbornly not getting worse. Your body, wrung out from a week or month of cough syrup, tonic wine, morphine lozenges, and whatever grandma could dig out from the garden or the cellar, is slowly adjusting to life without daily chemical surprises. You've weathered the storm of fever, fatigue, and pharmaceutical roulette, and now you're left with a dull ache in your limbs, a peculiar buzzing in your ears, and a vague memory of having signed up for piano lessons. The worst is over, probably, but you eye the medicine cabinet like it's plotting a comeback. Getting back on your feet in the 1920s was never a straight line. One day, you'd be propped up on the sofa, sipping beef broth and gazing out the window like a melancholic Victorian poet. The next, you'd be expected to walk around the block or, more likely, get back to work or school, regardless of whether your insides had finished negotiating peace with last week's cough remedy. "A little fresh air will do you good," said every well-meaning relative, ignoring the fact that the air was full of coal smoke, stray chickens, and the neighbor's latest experiment in backyard dentistry. Your appetite returns slowly, haunted by memories of castor oil and sarsaparilla, while the taste of chloroform seems to linger no matter how many lemons you suck on. The doctor might check in, nodding sagely at your color and pronouncing you on the mend. His prescription for continued recovery? Weak tea, light reading, and above all, not complaining, because nothing helps you heal like being told it's time to snap out of it. Children bounced back fastest, in part because they had the most practice. Kids who survived the medicine cabinet emerged with iron constitutions and tales of having slept through a hurricane, though nobody could be sure if it was the weather or the laudanum. Adults took longer, their recoveries haunted by mysterious side effects, jittery hands, forgetful brains, and a mild but persistent suspicion of spoons. The family rallied around the convalescent, bringing gelatin, beef tea, and the occasional orange if someone had friends in Florida. Building up strength was a group project. Sit in the sun, knit, play cards, and do your best not to catch whatever the next person in the house had. Newspapers touted miracle foods, cod liver oil, Horlick's malted milk, or eggs beaten into oblivion as the secret to regaining your former vigor. Meanwhile, Grandma eyed you skeptically, insisting that your color was still off and offering another swig of her infamous cough syrup. You declined, just barely, and then one day you realized you felt almost normal. Not better, exactly, but able to stand, walk, and perhaps, if you were truly daring, dance a little before dinner. You made it. The worst was over. You survived the cough, the cure, and the long, slow crawl back to yourself. If you felt a little strange, a little less sure of the world, that was just the price of progress. So, if you ever catch yourself griping about bland modern medicine, think of the survivors of the 1920s. The ones who didn't just battle germs, but the entire medicine cabinet. Because in that era, getting better meant outlasting the doctor, the disease, and occasionally, your own prescriptions. If you made it through, you were a legend, and if you managed to laugh about it, you were practically immortal. Sometimes the best cure is the one that doesn't do anything at all, intentionally. Enter the world of sugar pills, where medicine is just candy with a strong marketing campaign. You pop one after dinner, feel the power of positive thinking, and tell yourself that weird tingling in your arm is definitely just the healing working. Let's step right up and marvel at the greatest medical show on earth, the placebo parade. It's the 1920s, and you're tired of your medicine cabinet playing Russian roulette with your internal organs. Between the arsenic tonics, radium water, and heroin lozenges, it's almost a relief to find a remedy that promises absolutely nothing except the possibility of hope. Enter the humble sugar pill, a miracle of benign neglect, disguised as cutting-edge science. Your local pharmacist, seeing the exhaustion in your eyes and the nervous twitch in your left eyebrow, slides a small box across the counter. For general malaise, he whispers, or when you just need to believe. Inside, a handful of white tablets, unmarked except for the bold claim that they promote wellness and encourage the body's natural harmony. What exactly is in them? Sugar, cornstarch, maybe a trace of chalk. The taste is pleasant, the aftertaste reassuring, and the effects are entirely up to your imagination. The beauty of the placebo is its gentle optimism. You take one before bed and another after breakfast, savoring the possibility that something, anything, is happening. The marketing is magnificent. Testimonials from grateful customers who swear their nerves have never been steadier, their hair shinier, their feet lighter. Some claim the pills cured headaches, heartbreaks, and a lifelong fear of thunderstorms. My daughter took just 3, and her piano playing improved overnight. Beams one ad. Never mind that the daughter had also quit lessons the week before. Doctors, too, sometimes embraced the sugar pill strategy. If a patient's complaint was vague, persistent, or more psychological than physical, the trusted physician might reach for the special tonic, which just so happened to be indistinguishable from a spoonful of table sugar. The results were often miraculous. Patients felt better, slept deeper, and wrote lengthy thank you notes about the mysterious European remedy that had restored their vitality. The best part? Placebos rarely came with side effects, unless you counted increased self-confidence or the mild embarrassment of realizing you'd just paid $1 for fancy candy. The worst that could happen was a cavity, which, compared to the lead tonics and mercury powders on the shelf, seemed like a small price to pay for good spirits and a sense of agency. Of course, the placebo parade wasn't just for the hypochondriacs. Children were the biggest fans, delighted to be treated to medicine that tasted good and actually made them feel special. Parents doled out sugar pills like they were bestowing magical powers. This will help you sleep. This will make your tummy stop rumbling. If the child believed, sometimes it really did work. Even the family dog got in on the action, rewarded for good behavior with a calming tablet that was just a chunk of fondant. But the true genius of the placebo lay in its message. Sometimes, the mind is the best medicine. Positive thinking, trust, and a sprinkle of ritual could turn a useless pill into a nightly miracle. It was the era's quiet acknowledgement that not every ailment needed a sledgehammer. Sometimes, all you needed was a gentle nudge and a good story. The world has changed, but the placebo parade marches on, now in the form of vitamin gummies, herbal teas, and natural supplements, whose biggest benefit might just be the comfort they bring. Next time you take something and cross your fingers, remember the glory days of sugar pills, the safest, sweetest risk in the wild world of early 20th century medicine, because sometimes believing you're getting better is exactly the medicine you need. And in an era overflowing with dangerous cures, the wildest promise of all was the quiet, powerful hope that nothing, just maybe, might be everything. Step right up and watch as Dr. McGillicuddy's liver invigorator sues Professor Marvel's universal panacea for false advertising. The court case lasts 2 hours, and the judge is found later, sleeping peacefully after sampling both products. Spoiler: they're both just 60% alcohol and a prayer. Let's peer into the wacky world of 1920s patent medicine rivalry, where the business model is equal parts cutthroat, capitalism, vaudeville theatre, and chemical roulette. The shelves are crowded with elixirs, tonics, balms, and invigorators, all promising to banish your ailments, renew your spirit, and leave you at least moderately buzzed. But in an era where everyone's potion is guaranteed to cure everything except heartbreak and taxes, how do you stand out? If you're a savvy entrepreneur, you don't just make your tonic stronger, you make your competitor look weaker. Cue the tonic wars, where lawsuits fly faster than corks at a speakeasy, and every advertising claim is a potential declaration of war. Dr. McGillicuddy, proud creator of the liver invigorator tagline, for livers that dream of flying, launches a legal broadside at Professor Marvel's universal panacea, bringing immortality closer. Since 1899. The accusation? Marvel's panacea claims to cure absolutely everything. But according to McGillicuddy's own expert testimony, it doesn't contain nearly enough strychnine to treat the average case of melancholy or a persistent bunion. The judge, who is no stranger to the art of self-medication, requests samples of both products for investigative purposes. He emerges from chambers 2 hours later, a little paler and significantly less interested in the proceedings. The jury, meanwhile, is caught napping after a surprise taste test. By the time the verdict comes in, half the spectators have confessed to feeling invigorated, panaceaed, or simply delighted to be horizontal. This isn't just courtroom drama. It's high-octane advertising. Newspaper headlines trumpet the details. Liver invigorator accuses rival of weak formula. Universal panacea, nothing but water. Claims competitor who also sells water. Readers can't resist the spectacle. Rival brands spend fortunes placing full-page rebuttals. Why trust a liver invigorator when you can panacea your entire life? The fine print, of course, is where the real action is. Each product contains a proprietary blend of roots, herbs, mystery, and enough high-proof spirits to liven up the town council. It's not just about who's deadlier, either. Sometimes the lawsuit is about who's more miraculous, whose tonic cures more, lasts longer, or contains the rarest imported ingredients. One famous spat erupts over genuine South American bark, with one brand claiming exclusive rights and the other countering, "We use only the finest locally sourced tree scrapings, lovingly harvested at midnight." Patent lawyers become minor celebrities, popping up in ads, hawking their expertise. Is your competitor stealing your secret recipe for success? Call Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. We'll sue 'em blue. Behind the scenes, however, the companies often aren't all that different. The formulas are nearly identical. Mostly grain alcohol, sugar, and a soupçon of herbal extract. The real magic is in the marketing and the lawsuits. The point isn't to win in court. It's to win in the press, to get the town buzzing, and to make sure your bottle is the one sitting next to Grandma's knitting by the end of the week. Eventually, regulators start sniffing around, asking awkward questions about minimum lethal doses and long-term effects. The tonic wars simmer down, not because anyone wins, but because the party's almost over. New laws insist on proof of effectiveness and not killing your customers, which puts a real damper on the old marketing strategies. Still, for a glorious, ridiculous time, the world of tonics was a battlefield, one where victory was measured in sales, headlines, and the number of empty bottles at Sunday dinner. And in the end, the biggest winner was the consumer, if only because, after 2 shots of liver invigorator and a glass of universal panacea, you couldn't remember what you were trying to cure in the first place. Why trust the pharmacist when you can whip up your own cure at home? All you need is a teacup, some coal, tar, a sprig of pennyroyal, and a level of optimism bordering on reckless. You stir, you sip, you see God, and, for a few hours, you don't mind that rash at all. Welcome to the grand tradition of kitchen counter chemistry. The era when anyone with a wooden spoon, a brass scale, and access to the family spice rack could lay claim to being a doctor in their own right. In the 1920s, DIY medicine wasn't just a hobby. It was practically a national pastime. The same hands that kneaded bread and churned butter by day were by night compounding remedies for everything from athlete's foot to heartbreak. You didn't need a diploma, just confidence and the ability to read the fine print on a seed catalogue. The home chemist's toolkit was a beautiful mess. Dried roots and herbs from the backyard, a little oil of turpentine for stimulation, and maybe something a neighbor brought back from his one trip to New Orleans. Coal tar, the black, glistening residue left over from making dot gas, was a popular addition. Excellent for eczema, some said, and for waterproofing your wagon if the remedy didn't pan out. Pennyroyal, an herb with a sharp, minty aroma, was touted for everything from headaches to female complaints, though it occasionally doubled as insect repellent and, less usefully, a mild toxin. Recipes were flexible. If you ran out of one ingredient, substitute another. No willow bark? Try poplar. No poplar? Birch will do. The key was faith. In yourself, in folklore, and in the fact that if it tasted terrible, it must be working. You'd mix everything in a teacup, mug, or whatever happened to be clean, then heat the mixture over the stove while muttering encouragements or last rites to the bubbling brew. Dosing was an art, not a science. A teaspoon if you're cautious, a tablespoon if you're in a hurry, and a full cup if you're desperate. Children, pets, and sometimes even the family horse were enlisted as test subjects. Just a little taste, Daisy, you'll feel right as rain by morning. If anyone woke up with extra fingers, that was just another story for the family album. The effects ranged from instant relief to unplanned nap. Some remedies really did help. Chamomile for sleep, ginger for nausea, honey and lemon for a sore throat. Others were pure optimism in a bottle. Coal tar for coughs, turpentine for stomach aches, and mysterious brews that did nothing except inspire new and exciting forms of regret. At least if you made the cure yourself, you knew what went wrong. Neighbors swapped recipes like baseball cards. Try my willow bark tea for headaches. A spoonful of my grandmother's tonic will clear that up. If not, you'll forget you had it. The bravest home chemists published their best concoctions in church newsletters or local newspapers, swearing by the power of garlic, vinegar, and whatever else could be boiled, mashed, or mixed with gin. Was it dangerous? Occasionally, yes. Pennyroyal and coal tar could do real damage. But in an era when the pharmacist's own offerings could include heroin and arsenic, the kitchen counter didn't seem much riskier. At least when you played mad scientist at home, you could blame your own cooking if something went wrong. The real miracle was the community spirit. The process brought families together in feverish, if slightly hazardous, collaboration. Grandparents recited folk remedies, parents measured and stirred, kids cheered on the smoke and sizzle, and everyone crossed their fingers for a happy ending. So next time you see a homemade remedy go viral online, remember the home chemists of the 1920s, fearless, creative, and only slightly dangerous. Because sometimes the cure isn't in the bottle, but in the courage to try, the wisdom to laugh when it fails, and the good fortune to survive your own experiment. Sleep well, and leave the coal tar in the shed. So tonight, as you drift off, wrapped in the warmth of your safe, non-radioactive blankets, maybe spare a little gratitude for your own FDA-approved bottle of Tylenol, guaranteed not to contain arsenic, heroin, or anything that glows in the dark. The world of the 1920s medicine cabinet was a wild place. A time when getting rid of a cough could mean chasing it out with chloroform, and health was mostly just a game of chemical roulette played in the comfort of your own living room. Sure, our ancestors were stubborn. They were hopeful. They'd try anything, sometimes twice, if it came with a colourful label and a dash of hope. Sometimes those tonics worked a little. Sometimes they worked a little too well. And sometimes you were just lucky to wake up the next day with the same number of limbs and a story to tell. It's absurd, it's terrifying, and it's a testament to the power of human resilience and denial. So if you're listening to this from bed, safe from snake oil and sarsaparilla wine, remember, you are the product of generations who survived not just disease, but the so-called cures. Every peaceful night's sleep, every ordinary bottle of cough syrup, is thanks to the sheer grit, persistence, and occasional poor judgment of those who came before you. History may be ridiculous and sometimes dangerous, but it's also proof that people are creative, endlessly optimistic, and just a little bit bonkers. Rest easy tonight, knowing that nobody's coming by with a bottle of miracle brain elixir and a strong sales pitch. Instead, breathe deep, let yourself relax, and drift off with a quiet thank you to your ancestors, the ones who lived, learned, and, incredibly, survived the medicine cabinet of the Roaring Twenties. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next adventure. Good night.